Hello everyone, this is update for May 18, 2024, date 815 of the war, end of the date update. Also catch up for May 17 and 16. I'm going to start with general strategic updates and then I'm going to switch to the situation on the battlefield. First with Russia, actually probably more like Ukraine. Ukrainian military continues attacks against Russian oil refineries, which, as I stated, is the most efficient way and um, least sort of damaging to people way to reduce Russia's ability to attack Ukraine. So far there are a couple more attacks. It's unclear by how much refining capacity is going down, but certainly it's painful. There is no question about it. This is something that the only successful that Ukrainian military was able to sort of develop as a strategy to reduce Russia's ability to wage war against Ukraine. And my understanding that these attacks will continue as they're extremely effective and they have actually forced Russia's hand in terms of continuing the war. They obviously this is more like a long-term project because the longer this attacks continues, the more damage is being done to Russian refining capacity, and the more profound damage is, and the longer it will take to basically to fix that refining capacity. As I mentioned before, the problem is that Russian refining industry is relying heavily on custom-made equipment that's coming from the West, mostly from Europe. And so, because of the sanctions, it's not really easy to get that equipment. I'm sure Russia is trying to find some ways, but it's extremely bulky. It's not just a bunch of processors that you can import that any person can purchase. This is very visible purchases. The equipment is large in size, so it's really easy to track. So it's really hard to hide, purchasing this equipment around the world. So there are different numbers. I've seen numbers such as I think like from Bloomberg that Russian refining capacity is down 14%. Uh, to be to be fair, I don't think anyone knows for sure, except for the Russian political top. We'll find out from the numbers of the from the expert numbers, and I would say that Russian Statistical Bureau is not the most reliable source, but that's something that's available. Let's put this way. Now switch more directly to Ukraine. So 18th was the first day when new mobilization law uh, took was in effect in Ukraine, and that really started to produce some fireworks in Ukrainian society. Um, for a reason, it's obviously not random. So there were protests. You can see that truck drivers they blocked one of the major highways in Ukraine. It's from Kiev to Odessa. So basically, it's a north-south that connects countries from north to the south. So it was, as you can see, was blocked by the drivers, obviously protesting this new mobilization law. But it's, I would say, it's very narrow understanding. The protest is really against, I would say, I would say corruption at the core. That's and unfairness in Ukraine. And the reason I'm talking about unfairness is you can see here. This is the order from Minister of Economics of Ukraine, and this is the minister. As you can see, this person. So what this is a blatant example of corruption. So what this minister does, she allows a couple of companies, and one of them, for example, is called Favbet. Then the other one, which is basically gambling company, and then Global App, it's food delivery company. And there are a bunch of others, including some advertising agency, some food processing company. Basically, a couple of these companies is listed here, as you can see. This is the names of the companies. They somehow, you know, I cannot say bribe, but sort of something along those lines. And so this minister effectively passed the order that stated that employees of these companies are essential for Ukraine, and they cannot be mobilized. Which, as you can imagine, people working for gambling company, it's hard to imagine that they are essential during the war to continue gambling business. So as you can imagine, this is a lot of money. Someone is making a lot of money and effectively bribing government officials. And this was a big scandal in Ukraine. Everybody knows about this, and so as a result, this minister had to cancel once this became public. She had to come out and cancel this order, but I'm sure there are some others that are again not public, and that's a whole problem in Ukraine. There is extreme lack of transparency, which creates vast opportunities for corruption, and that's at the core. That's really the source of all of this corruption, at least in a simplistic way. In root causes are much more deeper, but it is the most simple and most primitive way of dealing with corruption is transparency, which is non-existent effectively in Ukraine. So beyond this protest, there were a couple of attacks against this, let's say, mobilization teams that are roaming through the country. So in one place they were attacked with knife, and then there was, I think, member of Ukrainian military was randomly attacked because he was perceived as member of this mobilization team. So as you can see, there is clearly a negative feeling towards this new law, and the more important is that, as I stated before, that people don't really understand why they should be dying for the corrupt system. That's really at the core of all of these protests, because the protests are at the core, people obviously not against their own country, but they're not willing to basically die for corrupt government. And that's, if you sort of simplify everything into one clear message, that's essentially what it is. Now let's move to the situation on the battlefield. I'm gonna do a walkthrough in a clockwise fashion, the way I always do. So first is the situation along the state border, not including obviously Kharkiv region. So it seems to be fairly quiet. There are non-stop rumors that Russian troops may attack in the Sumy area, which is where I'm showing. And again, there are examples of corruption in this case as well, where the defensive lines that were supposed to be built were not built, and there are pictures circulating in Ukrainian media showing that as a proof. At the same time, money were spent, and obviously they were stolen. There is no question about that. Similar situation right now. There is scandal growing in Ukraine, where it's becoming very clear that defensive lines west, let's say northeast, sorry, not west, northeast of Kharkiv, they were also not built. The money were stolen. Even minefields were not laid, or in the places where they laid, the mines were then later removed. So it looks like it's complete. Um, I don't know what to say, mass or sabotage, or I don't know what the best word for this, but I would say, and again, at the core is incompetence and corruption. That's really what drives all of this. So now, Ukrainian military has to pay with the lives of ordinary soldiers for all of these mistakes, and obviously, all of this goes back and traces all the way up to Ukrainian president, because he is effectively right now is in charge of. He was in charge of everything, and right now it's even more so than before. So there's no really checks and balances against his power. So effectively, I wouldn't call him dictator, no, from a formal perspective, but de facto he is sort of like a dictator in the country. Um, Now let's move to the first um, section of the front line, the Kharkiv area. So this is sort of more or less the latest situation. As you can see, the key objective for Russian troops are Lipsy. This is this fairly large village, small town. Russian troops, clearly established line here where I'm showing. It wasn't very clear before. So they captured village Zaporizhzhia, Izbitske, Burgovatka. So it's all in Russian hands. They started attacking across the river, attempting to cross the river um, towards, so basically on the flank of Vovchansk, to force withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Vovchansk. The similar situation is happening around in the area of Vovchansky Khutori, where they attempting to cross this tiny river called Volcha. So far, they were not able to do that, but it's extremely clear the intent of Russian command is to basically squeeze from the flanks Ukrainian forces defending in Vovchansk and force withdrawal from there. At the same time, there is a frontal pressure in Vovchansk, so Russian troops control northern outskirts of Vovchansk. The situation is very dynamic. Sometimes they advance in depths of the town. Sometimes they pushed back. So um, it's from a practical perspective. It's not point to discuss much except that there is strong Russian pressure continues, and giving this pressure, if it continues, eventually Ukrainian forces will lose Vovchansk. That's pretty straightforward where this is all going. Having said that, I want to mention that there is not enough Russian troops to really make major advances. This is, I would almost want to say, sort of small, relatively small expeditionary force. The apparently the logic was to create a buffer zone and to push Ukrainian forces sort of deeper inside of Ukraine to prevent attacks against Belgorod. At the same time, it's not gonna work. So again, there's not really much logic so far to this attack, except this attack was phenomenal in exposing corruption in the Ukrainian political top, especially around Ukrainian president, because of this stolen money and not built defensive line. So I would say the major effect of this attack is really not so much military wise, but really political, and reducing popular support of Ukrainian president and his political group. Essentially, that's where the hit the pain was really there, even though technically this was a military attack. But I would say it was political assassination, really. Now let's move. This is the situation around Vovchansk. Really hasn't changed since probably past week. So situation more or less stable. This is where this village Tikhe, this that being factually controlled by Russian troops, where they trying to cross this village Volcha, and then Russian troops trying to attack cross Siversky Donetsk into village Prelipka, as you can see here, so far without success. Now let's move to the North Donbas section of the front line. Things here are more or less the same. Russian pressure in the northwestern direction towards Kupiansk. It's very clear. Kupiansk is the main goal. Without much advances so far, it doesn't mean that Russian troops sort of stopped. There are small advances here and there, but nothing major so far. Similar situation here in south, where Russian troops are attacking to cross this. First of all, eliminate Ukrainian bridgehead on the eastern side of this small, tiny river. Again, also without major success. Now let's move to this central Donbas front line. Oh, sorry, still, I apologize, I messed up. So this is actually, we are now looking at the North Donbas section of the front line. I misspoke. So the northern sector of the North Donbas section of the front line, fairly quiet. No major Russian advances here, and things sound quiet. The situation west of Bakhmut remains to be difficult for Ukrainian troops, but at the same time, Russian troops clearly bogged down. As I mentioned before, they still need to do sort of a lot of work to be successful to capture Chasiv, and it does feel that they are lacking in resources to continue their attacks at the required level. They obviously have resources to attack, but what I mean is they need to capture this village Kalinivka here, sort of create the northern pincer. They still are not able to do that. They were successful on the southern side. They basically came to this channel, but they need to do the same up north, and at the same time they are trying to attack frontally. So it seems like they are spread out thin, and therefore they effectively bogged down and not able to make major advances. At the same time, in the war of attrition, eventually, if Russian side continues this, even this attacks don't work, simply because Ukrainian forces also losing people and they're getting a lot less replenishment. Eventually, the line on Ukrainian side will become thin, and that's how Russian troops may advance there. But this is definitely not happening soon. Then now let's look at the situation on the central Donbass front line. So first, I want to just provide a little bit update on this advance in Avdiivka area. So essentially, not really much of advances for the Russian side. Things somewhat stable. The only exception probably this village Umanske, which now fully in control of Russian hands. But it was almost captured. I mentioned this before, so just now it's sort of fully lost by Ukrainian forces. Otherwise, things more or less stable. They not, again, the same story as up north, where they stable in the sense that this war of attrition, and eventually once there is a significant disadvantage to Ukrainian forces, that the front line will collapse somewhere, and basically Russian troops will flood through that hole. It's of sort of particular note is that Russian troops are not trying to advance north. That the sole focus is really continuing advance towards west, as you can see. This is just big picture of the entire section of the front line. Russian troops are still going through Krasnohorivka, so it's not that easy to go through the urban area. It requires a lot of artillery and air support, and so it takes time. Let's put it this way. So for now, they slowly but surely going through Krasnohorivka. Once they capture it, then it's going to be much more difficult situation for Ukrainian troops. They also bogged down west of Novomykhailivka as well, so no major Russian advances here. Now let's move to the Zaporizhzhia front line. So things here are also more or less similar. Two areas of Russian pressure. One is Robotyne, where they made some advances in the past, but so far no advances over this 3-day period, where Russian troops finally they managed to squeeze Ukrainian forces out of Robotyne. So Robotyne back in the hands of Russian troops. I wouldn't call it big success. It's absolutely frontal squeeze, absolutely mindless sort of attacks by Russian forces. So I would say Russian command in this area is clearly lacking on intellectual capacity. Let's put it this way. Now let's move to the situation along the Dnipro River. And things here are also quiet. No major Russian attempts to eliminate bridgeheads. And by attempts, I mean infantry attacks, because it's effectively what's really needed is infantry attacks. The attacks with artillery and gliding bombs are obviously happening, but it's clear that this is not a major area of attention for Russian command. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye bye.